My name is Quinn Abernathy. I am 29 years old. And I want to tell you about the morning I landed in Phoenix, Arizona, opened my banking app at 6:14 a.m. in a terminal seat at Sky Harbor Airport, and watched a number that had taken me 4 years to build disappear from my screen like it had never existed. I did not cry. I did not call anyone. I sat in that seat with my carry-on between my feet and the airport just beginning to fill around me. The cleaning crew pushing their wide floor brushes in long arcs, the first coffee stand of the morning lifting its metal gate with a sound like a single note struck and held, and I read the transaction line 4 times. The way you read something when you understand the words, but the meaning has not fully arrived yet. Withdrawal. $26,000. Initiated at 3:47 p.m. 2 days prior. While I was in a glass conference room on the 14th floor of a building in Seattle, presenting a logistics audit to a client who paid my firm $340 an hour for my time. The account was in my name. But my mother had been on it since I was 19 years old when I opened it as a college student, and she co-signed because I had no credit history and the bank required it. I had meant to remove her years ago. I had told myself I would do it when I had a moment. I had not done it. That morning in Phoenix, sitting under fluorescent airport light with a coffee I had not touched going cold in the cup beside me, I understood exactly what that moment of postponement had cost me. 4 years of $400 automatic monthly deposits. The larger transfers I had made during good billing quarters, $900 one December, $1,400 the following March, $600 in September, when a client renewed a contract I had not been certain would renew. The vacation I had planned in 2022 and deferred because saving felt more important than going. The coat I had wanted last November and bought the cheaper version of instead. All of it, $26,000, taken in a single afternoon while I was in a meeting and my phone was face down on a conference table. And I made a decision, quietly and completely, before my gate even opened for boarding. It was Tuesday, the second week of March 2024. I had been traveling since the previous Thursday, working a client audit at a distribution center in Kent, outside Seattle. My job as a senior logistics analyst at a supply chain consulting firm called Meridian Group takes me away from my home base in Denver 4 to 6 days a month, sometimes more near quarter end. I had been with Meridian for 3 years, having joined at 26 after 2 years at a smaller firm where I learned the basics of supply chain mapping and made, in retrospect, almost nothing. At Meridian, my billing rate had increased 3 times. I had learned to be careful with money, not from fear but from the steady practice of someone who understands that stability does not arrive on its own. I checked my app the way I always do when I land, not with worry but with the same reflex that makes me review the day's calendar each morning and reconcile my reimbursement receipts each Sunday evening. I am someone who looks at the actual numbers. This habit was instilled in me at 22 by my first supervisor, a methodical woman named Dana Kessler, who ran the operations desk at a small freight brokerage in Denver, who sat me down in my 3rd week and said, without preamble, the most important financial habit you can develop is looking at the numbers rather than assuming they're fine. She said it once. I never forgot it. The number was not fine. $26,000. Gone. Initiated at 3:47 p.m. Mountain Time on March 11th, when I was in Seattle and my phone was face down on a table. I stared at the transaction line, and then I called the bank. The representative, her name was Jennifer, with the careful warmth of someone delivering news she has delivered before, confirmed that a joint account holder named Diane Abernathy had made the withdrawal in person at the Tucson East branch, presenting valid state-issued identification. The transaction was legitimate under the terms of the account. There was nothing the bank could do to reverse it. I thanked Jennifer. I hung up. I looked out the terminal window at the pale gold strip of light appearing above the mountain ridgeline and thought about 4 years. Everything I had deposited and not spent, and not touched and not moved. All of it condensed into one line. Withdrawal. Initiated by joint holder. $26,000. Branch. Tucson East. Before I tell you what happened when I finally called my mother that afternoon, I want to ask you something. Tell me, where are you right now, and what does the light look like outside? Is it morning still, or is it the kind of mid-afternoon that is already going gray at the edges? I ask because what I am about to describe requires you to understand a very specific kind of exhaustion, not the kind that comes from not enough sleep, but the kind that builds over years of being the person in your family who never makes anything harder, who absorbs things quietly and calls it love, and what it costs you, invisibly and slowly, until one morning at 6 in an airport the cost becomes a number you can see. I need to tell you about my family and about my brother. Neither of them makes sense without the other. I grew up in Tucson as the second of 3 children. My older brother Marcus is 33. He is handsome and charming and has held 7 jobs since graduating from Arizona State in 2014, 2 in sales, 1 in property management, 1 at a gym, 1 driving for a courier service, 1 at a brewery tasting room, and at the time of the story, a part-time position at a landscaping company his friend owns, which Marcus describes to people as consulting. I have watched him lose jobs, borrow money, make plans that do not come through, and be met at every landing by a soft floor that someone else built for him. He is not a cruel person. He is a person who has never been asked to build his own floor, because there has always been one ready. My parents, Diane and Robert Abernathy, have lived in the same house on Crestview Drive in Tucson for 27 years. My mother is 58, my father, 61. They are not malicious. They love their children, and they love Marcus with the specific intensity of people who are afraid for someone. He is the one whose life seems perpetually unresolved, and parents who fear for a child tend to pour their resources toward that child the way you pour water toward the deepest crack, hoping to hold the structure together before it splits. What they do not always see is that this pouring is what deepens the crack. It teaches the person inside it that the wall will always hold. It teaches them not to hold it themselves. They love me, and my younger sister Priya too, but in the way you love something that appears to be fine. Quinn manages. My mother has said at family gatherings for as long as I can remember. Quinn is practical. What she means, I think, is that I do not ask for anything, and she has spent years mistaking my silence for contentment rather than self-sufficiency, which are not the same thing and never have been. In September 2020, Marcus lost his 3rd job in 4 years, the car dealership in Scottsdale. By October, my mother had called me twice in 1 week asking if I could contribute toward his rent, which was $1,240 a month and behind by 6 weeks. I transferred $800 in November and $800 in December, and then I stopped. 2 months of strained phone calls followed before the subject dropped from the surface of our conversations and submerged into the place my family keeps things it has decided not to look at directly. In the spring of 2021, 3 weeks before my 27th birthday, Marcus needed $3,400 for a used truck with engine problems. My parents paid for the truck. They paid for the repairs too, another $1,870, and my father mentioned this on a phone call in a tone I had learned over the years to recognize, not asking, just informing, allowing the information to sit between us and generate its own pressure. I sent him $600 that week, not because he asked but because I could feel the weight of it and did not yet know how to not respond to weight. In the summer of 2021, my mother mentioned on a Sunday call that Marcus had needed help with a security deposit on a new apartment. The amount was $980. She mentioned it the way she mentions most things that cost me money, embedded inside other information, sandwiched between news about a neighbor's garden and a question about whether I had seen a television program, so that extracting the no from the surrounding conversation would require effort that felt disproportionate to the amount. I sent the $980 on a Tuesday evening. I added it to a document I had begun keeping, quietly and without announcing it to anyone, that I had titled simply Family. A running total of transfers. I had started it not as evidence of anything but as the habit of a person who tracks numbers, the same habit Dana Kessler had given me at 22, turned now on my own family because the numbers had started to feel like they wanted to be seen. I added it to the document. The truth is that I had known somewhere beneath my awareness that this moment was coming, not this exact form of it, not the parking garage and the airport and the $26,000, but something like it. The pattern had been building toward a moment like this for years. Each time my family needed something and turned to me, I felt the pull of it like a tide, and each time I had gone along with the pull because it was easier than standing against it, and because standing against it required me to say, either out loud or to myself, what the tide was. I was not ready to say it. I was not ready until I was sitting in Phoenix at 6 in the morning, and the number was simply there, on my screen, irrefutable. Some kinds of understanding can only come from outside the frame. I had been too far inside it to see. What I understand now, looking back, is that the amount my family spent on Marcus's wedding was not the whole story. The number that matters is the years before it. The $800 I sent in November 2020. The $800 in December. The $600 toward the truck repairs. The $980 security deposit. The $1,200 catering deposit. The dozens of smaller costs absorbed so smoothly they barely registered as costs at all. The time I covered dinner when my mother visited Denver and mentioned, lightly, that things were a little tight that month. The groceries I ordered to be delivered to my parents' house during the first months of the pandemic. The birthday transfer I sent Marcus in 2023 because I knew, without being told, that he probably needed it. None of these were wrong, individually. As a pattern, they added up to something I had never named or totaled, and they had trained everyone around me, and me as well, to believe that this was simply how things worked between us. Quinn gives. Quinn manages. Quinn has more than enough. By January 2024, my document showed $6,820 in transfers over 3 years. I had not shared this number with anyone. I kept it the way you keep something you are not yet ready to use but know you will eventually need to have. In March 2022, Marcus got engaged to a woman named Brooke at a dinner at my parents' house. Brooke is warm and genuine, and this story is not about her. By the time the dinner table was cleared that evening, my mother was already describing the wedding as a shared community undertaking. The venue in Sedona she had already looked at online, the florist Brooke wanted, the dress that would need alterations. My Aunt Connie, my mother's older sister, who approaches large family events with the full commitment of someone who has been waiting her whole life for a project this significant, had been central to the planning from the day of the engagement and sent the family group chat a link to the Sedona venue with 17 exclamation points in January 2023. No one asked how the bill would be paid. The catering deposit conversation arrived in June 2022 on a Thursday evening call at 8:47 p.m. $1,200. Would I be able to help? I transferred it on July 6th at 9:13 p.m. to her Venmo, after a dinner I had not been hungry for. I told myself it was a gift. I added it to the document. My savings account 4417, the one for my college years, the one my mother's name had been on for 10 years, held $26,340 by early March 2024. I had thought about removing her from it at least a dozen times. Each time I had decided against it. It felt like officiating a distrust I had been carrying without naming. And so I deferred and left the door open, and one Wednesday afternoon in Tucson while I was 30,000 feet above Northern California, my mother walked through it. The venue had sent a final balance notice, $14,600 due 30 days before the event date. Marcus had $2,300. My parents had $4,800. There was a gap of $7,500. My Aunt Connie, present in my parents' kitchen when this was discussed, pointed out that there was an account. My mother drove to the Tucson East Branch at 3:47 p.m. on March 11th, presented her ID, and withdrew $26,000. Not the gap amount. Not $7,500. $26,000. She left $340 in the account. I landed in Denver at 1:38 p.m. on March 13th and sat in my car in long-term parking for 19 minutes, composing what I wanted to say. I had decided on almost nothing. I wanted to hear what she would tell me first. I called at 2:17 p.m. She answered on the second ring. Warm, slightly distracted, the exhaust fan over the stove clicking in the background, a sound I have known my entire life, and which that afternoon felt like something I could not bear. She sounded like a woman who had done nothing requiring apology. I said, "Mom, I need to talk to you about my savings account." A short, calibrated pause. Then, "Quinn, I was going to call you. I know we should have talked first, but the situation came up very quickly, and there wasn't time." Still warm. Still reasonable. Marcus's venue balance was due, and he came up short. We didn't have the full amount, and we knew you had that account, and we knew you would want to help your brother get the wedding he deserves. It was for the family, Quinn. Your brother's wedding matters more than a savings account. I held the phone away from my face. The parking garage was quiet. 2 rows over, someone was loading groceries into a trunk. I could hear the wheels of their cart on the concrete. I said, "How much was taken?" She said, $26,000. "We will pay it back, most of it, once Marcus and Brooke are settled." I said, "Who was present when this decision was made?" She said, "Your Aunt Connie was here. Dad was home." Then something sharpening. "Quinn, I really think you are making this into something it doesn't need to be." I said, "I have to go." I hung up. My Aunt Connie called 40 seconds later. I watched the name on the screen and put the phone face down on the passenger seat. My mother called at 3:07 p.m., at 3:31 p.m., at 3:24 p.m., a text from Connie. "Quinn, you should be honored that your contribution helped make this day possible. Not every family gets to share like this." I read it once. I set the phone down. Something inside me finally hardened instead of bending. I had been bending for years, toward Marcus's rent, toward the truck, toward the security deposit, toward the catering deposit, toward all the smaller absorbed costs I had been tracking in a document I never showed anyone because showing it would have meant deciding something. Every time I bent, I called it love. I called it family. I had been translating extraction into generosity for so long that I had forgotten there was a distinction. Sitting in that garage, I remembered. I called my bank at 2:31 p.m. I spoke with a representative named Carlos who was clear and patient and walked me through the account structure without making me feel embarrassed for asking. He confirmed my mother was joined on account 4,417 only. My other 6 accounts, primary checking, down payment savings, high-yield savings open March 2021, money market, brokerage-linked cash, business expense, were all sole holder, no family access at all. He initiated the joint holder removal paperwork immediately. A notarized written request from the primary holder would be required, and the process would take 5 to 7 business days. At 2:47 p.m. I called my financial advisor, Preeti Nair, at Nair Wealth Management on Colfax Avenue in Denver. She returned the call at 4:15 p.m., and we spoke for 34 minutes. She confirmed that the withdrawal was legally executed, joint holder, valid ID, legitimate transaction under account terms. Civil recovery was possible but uncertain. She referred me to a civil attorney named James Whitmore at a firm on Spear Boulevard if I chose to pursue it. She also helped me add secondary verification on all 6 sole holder accounts for any withdrawal over $500. We scheduled a follow-up for Monday to complete the full restructuring review. By 6:30 p.m., I had done everything that could be done that day. I made pasta. I went to bed at 10:47 p.m. and slept 6 hours. Better than I expected. The formal removal of my mother from account 4417 processed on March 19th. In the 6 days between the 13th and the 19th, I received 14 calls from my mother, 3 from my Aunt Connie, 2 from my father, and 1 from Marcus at 9:23 p.m. on March 15th. "Hey Quinn, just wanted to say thank you. I know Mom handled it a little weird, but it really meant a lot. Brooke and I are so grateful for your contribution to our day." He sounded warm and genuinely unaware. He was thanking me for something I had not agreed to give. My father called on March 17th at 7:44 p.m. He said my mother was very upset. He asked if I would please just call her. He said she had told him I had known about the withdrawal beforehand. I said, "Dad." I found out at 6 in the morning in an airport when I opened my phone. A long silence. He said, "Oh." Then, "Quinn, I am sorry. I did not know it happened that way." 4 minutes. The most honest conversation we had had in at least 2 years. On the 4th day, March 17th, my Aunt Connie had left a voicemail at 11:22 a.m. that I did not listen to until a week later. She said that what I was doing to my family was shameful. She said my mother had done nothing wrong, that the account had both their names on it, and that any reasonable person would understand that a wedding was a family occasion. She said, "Your brother is going to remember this, Quinn. We are all going to remember this." Her voice was controlled, the way voices are when someone is working to keep anger inside a respectable container. I listened to it twice, sitting at my kitchen table on a Wednesday evening, and then I added it to the documentation folder and did not call her back. My mother's voicemails were different in register. The first three were firm and explanatory, the same argument as the phone call, restated with more patience. The fourth was softer. She said she hoped I knew how much she loved me. She said she hoped I understood that what she had done came from a place of trying to hold the family together. The fifth voicemail, left on March 18th at 8:41 p.m., was the quietest. She said, "Quinn, I think I may have made a mistake in how I handled this. I need you to call me." She did not say sorry. She came close to it, closer than she usually comes. I listened to it 3 times and wrote nothing in response because I did not yet know what response I had. I did not attend the wedding on April 19th. I sent Marcus and Brooke kitchen knives from their registry at $187, shipped directly to their new apartment, and a handwritten card. I did not go to Sedona. I confirmed my absence to my mother on April 3rd by text. She called 6 times that day. My Aunt Connie sent a message. "This is really low, Quinn. Your brother will never forgive you for this." I saved it to documentation. Priya went and called me the morning after with a long voice message. She said the venue was stunning. Marcus cried during his vows. The food was excellent. She said at the reception dinner, when my name came up, Aunt Connie had made a remark about people who put a savings account before their family, and our mother had not disagreed, and Priya had looked at her plate. She said she was sorry. I told her she had nothing to be sorry for. We talked for 50 minutes about her job, a novel she had been reading, my new neighborhood in Denver, and it was one of the better conversations I had had in months, possibly in a year. Marcus and Brooke sent me a photo from their honeymoon in Costa Rica, the two of them standing in front of a waterfall, both grinning, genuinely happy in the uncomplicated way people are at the beginning of something they believe will be good. I texted back a heart. I meant it, actually. Whatever had happened between me and my family, Marcus and Brooke were at the start of a life together, and I did not wish them anything but the happiness in that photo. The story I am telling you is not a story about hating my brother. It is a story about a door that had been left open and what finally made me close it. The closing is not dramatic when it finally happens. There is no confrontation, no tearful revelation, no moment where someone says the true thing and the family rearranges itself into a better shape. The closing, when it comes, is quiet and administrative. It is 4 minutes and 20 seconds with your father on a phone call. It is a notarized form submitted to a bank. It is a payment made directly to an imaging center so that the money goes where it is supposed to go, to the person who needs it, without passing through the structure that has always redirected it elsewhere. It is ordinary, and it is final, and it is, in the end, just paperwork. The weight of it is in the years before, not the moment itself. 3 months after the wedding, on July 14th at 11:06 a.m. on a Sunday, my father called. His voice had a different quality, thinner somehow, the pauses longer. He said he had not been feeling well. Tests at an imaging center in Tucson. The insurance had not covered the full amount. The out-of-pocket was $2,340. He hated to ask. He said he had tried to look up the account he had on file, and when he tried the number, it did not seem to be working. He stopped. He said, "The account I have written down here. It does not seem right anymore." I said quietly, "Dad, that account does not exist anymore. When I restructured everything in March, I closed it and moved the balance. There are no accounts with any family access on them now." A silence. Not the long defensive kind I had braced for. A shorter one, with a different texture, the sound of a man understanding something he had been hoping would arrive differently. He said, "Ah. Then, Quinn, I want you to know I never meant for any of this to." I said, "Dad, tell me about the imaging bill." He told me. I asked him to forward the invoice. It arrived at 11:34 a.m. I paid it at 11:41 a.m., $2,340, transferred directly to the imaging center's billing portal, no intermediary. I sent my father the confirmation number and told him to call when the results came in. He called 3 weeks later, mostly clear. He sounded relieved. He sounded also like a man adjusting to a changed landscape, one where a door he had always assumed would open had quietly become a wall, and he was finding the way around it without making too much of the fact that the path was different now. There is something I understand now about money inside families that I did not understand before I sat in a parking garage in Denver with $26,000 missing. Financial access follows paths of least resistance, and the paths of least resistance are almost always the people who have been trained through years of small absorbed costs and unreturned favors and quietly normalized asking to make giving easy. I made giving easy for a long time. I thought I was being generous. Generosity and availability are not the same thing. They feel similar from the inside at first, and increasingly different as the years pass, and the difference matters in ways I only fully understand now. Some things are only yours if you protect them. That is not a cynical position. It is a practical one, and I am done confusing bitterness with clarity. I closed on my condo on September 12, 2024. 2 bedrooms on the 4th floor of a building in the Highlands neighborhood of Denver, west-facing windows that catch the afternoon light in a way that still stops me sometimes when I come home, and the room is already golden. I stood in the empty living room on closing day with the keys in my hand and thought about 4 years of deposits and one Tuesday afternoon in a parking garage and Carlos at the bank and Preeti Nair and the restructuring that took one afternoon to execute once I finally stopped deferring it. My mother and I speak occasionally. The calls are shorter and more careful, the way you are careful with something repaired that you are not entirely sure will hold. She has not apologized directly. She said once, in late August, that she hoped I understood they had done what they felt was right for the family. I said I understood, and we left it there. My father calls on Sunday mornings sometimes. Those calls are quiet and occasionally worth something: small talk, the weather, how the garden is doing. I find I can hold them. If you have a bank account a family member has been listed on since you opened it in college, and you have been meaning to restructure, your bank will allow you to initiate a joint holder removal as the primary account holder without requiring the other party's consent or presence. You need a notarized written request and several business days. You do not need to explain yourself to anyone. The access was something you extended at a time when you needed help, and you are allowed to take it back now that you do not. If you were in Quinn's position, if you landed from a work trip and opened your app at 6:14 in the morning and found your family had taken $26,000 from an account they still had access to, would you have paid your father's imaging bill the way Quinn did, directly to the center and without conditions? Or would you have held every door completely shut until the conversation about the $26,000 was fully resolved first? This channel is for entertainment and personal reflection. Names and identifying details have been changed. If you're experiencing financial exploitation within your family, please consult a qualified attorney or financial advisor.